Happy Thursday, guys. Hope you're well. I hope your first week of June is going really well. Mine is going in the right direction. It's got off to a bit of a bumpy start, but I'm glad to say actually that the week is progressing and going in a positive direction, and I hope your week is going in a positive direction too. Today I wanted to share with you 3 things I noticed when I started to love myself. My journey of loving myself actually started in my late 20s. As I've shared on other videos, I went through childhood sexual abuse, and in the aftermath of that, it took 20 years to heal from the trauma and all the after effects of going through such abuse. So everything for me happened, later on in my life. And one of those things was, when I started to love myself. And my journey of loving myself started with liking myself. After I started to deal with my low self-esteem, low confidence, poor view of self, through therapy, through prayer, through all that stuff, I started this journey of starting to find things that I liked about myself. And gradually over the years, I started to see that I actually loved myself. And that was like maybe a 10-year journey. For me, it might be, sooner for other people, but it was a journey. But I'm coming up to a milestone birthday soon, and I realized that if I would have loved myself sooner, a lot of things probably would have been different in my life. But the way life is, it's not a straight road. Things happen and you just deal with it. And this is where I am at now, and I'm very grateful and blessed to be at this stage now where I've grown so much and healed from so many things. So I want to share these 3 things that I noticed about loving myself, and I hope that they encourage you if you're on the same journey. One of the things that I noticed is that I started to treat myself with respect. It's very hard to explain unless you've gone through abuse or something traumatic, how it affects your view of self and how you treat self. I was somebody who was quite dysfunctional when I was younger. I self-harmed. I, did things that wasn't good for me mentally, emotionally and spiritually. Because of the abuse and how I was treated by my dad, it left me feeling that I was trash, that I wasn't worth loving. And because of that kind of mindset and view that I had of myself, the decisions and things, some of the things that I did in my life reflected that. And, once I started to kind of work through those things, I realized that, I needed to treat myself better, to treat myself with kindness and compassion, and to value myself. And my faith in Christ has helped me to do that a lot, actually, because in Psalm 139 God says I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and it isn't dependent upon whether I feel it or not, or circumstances, or trying to perform for it. This is just a fact of what God says, and that helped me a lot to move on from how I was disrespecting myself. And I realized having respect for myself encompasses how I treat myself, how I treat my body, and everything else. So that is something that loving myself has brought into my life, respect for me. Another thing is, what it brought into my life, loving myself, is not allowing others to treat me like trash. When I was dysfunctional, when I was going through all that, I got myself involved in some very toxic dynamics with other people. And obviously they had their own issues as well, the different friends and relationships and things like that. But because I didn't have value for myself, respect for myself, I allowed other people to treat me really bad. Even in my relationship, parental relationship, like with my mum and things like that, back in the day, going back in my early 20s, because I didn't have that respect for myself, I would just allow kind of certain situations to just happen. But once I started to love myself, all those kind of disrespectful situations, disrespectful people who treated me badly, who thought it was okay to treat me badly because, they could see I didn't even respect myself, I got rid of all of that out of my life, and I feel better for it. I am now somebody who doesn't allow people around me, or allow myself to be in situations where people feel that they can treat me like trash. I set the standard for how I am treated. And the last quick thing I want to share with you is that when you love yourself, you set high standards for yourself. And that, as I've just mentioned, includes how you allow others to treat you, how you treat yourself. When you love yourself, it brings a whole different mindset, because when I didn't love myself, and viewed myself through a very poor lens. I didn't have a standard for myself. But once I started to love myself, and how I valued myself, I won't allow myself to be disrespected. I set very high standards for myself. I do things that enrich my life, and things that are kind and compassionate to me. And, I just have standards for myself now and my life. And that is what loving yourself brings to your life. It's not easy to get there, because obviously I had a lot of self-loathing and I didn't have compassion for myself. But once you get there, it just changes everything. Your circle might become smaller. The things that you do change and everything like that. But I just want to share these tips with you, and I hope that they encourage you to love yourself. And no matter what anybody says, there's only one you. You are unique, and you need to look after yourself, and you need to respect and love yourself, because you are irreplaceable.